Alrighty, so thanks for tuning in, everyone. I am so happy to be announcing my guest today. He is an acclaimed actor, a filmmaker, and musician, and his new film, Pure O, premieres on Monday, March 13th at South by Southwest in Austin, Texas. And so thank you for being with us today, Dillon Tucker.
All right. Thank you for having me.
Yep, you are certainly welcome. So, just to start out in your own words, tell us what your film Pure O is all about.
It is about an aspiring screenwriter and musician who is grappling with a pure O diagnosis. And
Mhm.
pure O is a lesser known form of OCD that has strictly mental manifestations without physical compulsions. So he's trying to understand it and doesn't really understand what he's going through while he's sort of juggling a recent engagement, and he's working at a drug and alcohol rehab, and he's working with clients. And so, yeah, it's a universal story that's kind of showing mental health, but also showing the perspective of how it affects all the loved ones and everyone around him on his journey.
Gotcha. And
Yeah.
I know this film is semi-autobiographical. So, in what ways did your own journey with OCD influence this film? And what was it like to channel something so personal into your art?
Yeah. Well, it obviously affected everything, affected the entire story because it's based on my own life. Um, yeah, I mean, it basically it wasn't as difficult as you'd think, just because I waited. I didn't want to do it when I was going through everything. So it's a period of my life, but it's a period of my life maybe, close to a decade ago now.
Mhm.
And uh I outlined everything when I was going through it, but I didn't want to touch it because I knew that it would just be shrouded in bias, and I wouldn't be able to see through the trees. And I wasn't really interested in making this film as a vehicle of catharsis for myself.
Mhm.
I really just wanted to. I thought that this was a really unique opportunity to share what Pure O really is, because I didn't even know what it was when I was going through it.
Mhm.
So it started with that, but then I always write from a place of universal themes and things like that. So it wasn't just the fact that I was going through this one experience, but it was sort of all these other things that were happening in my life around that time. And in so many ways, it's really a film about somebody who's in their 20s going into their 30s and sort of not coming of age from the traditional perspective of like a teenager into an adult, but it's more that journey of being in your 20s and then like really becoming an adult into your 30s.
Mhm.
So I guess coming of age isn't the right, I don't know what that term would be, but it's more about just sort of like really entering adulthood in a real way,
Mhm.
and going through that sea change of going, hitting 30 and really sort of having your worldview really get set and deciding who you want to be. And it's somebody who's really dealing with that more than anything. He's sort of deciding, who do I want to be as a man? Who do I want to, going forward, how do I want to sort of, obviously this thing comes and he has to deal with it, but it just pivots his life in this other direction. And he has to really just make a decision sort of like, how do I, how do I want to be? And who do I want to be? And so the film is really, I think, about somebody, a man who's trying to come to grips with that.
Gotcha. So speaking about OCD specifically, um, for me, this was really a learning experience because I think for a lot of people, we think about OCD as a form of behavior. We don't think about it as being an obsession with thoughts.
Mm.
Tell me a little bit more. What are some of those misperceptions that you think people have of OCD, and how do you think this film can help maybe influence the conversation around it?
Well, I think there's a lot of misconceptions about it. Like I said, I had my own misconceptions about it. I mean, there's still people
Mm-hmm.
within the therapeutic community that have their misconceptions about what OCD really is. And the thing is to understand is that pure O versus traditional OCD is exactly the same. I mean, OCD is OCD, period. It's just that one manifests itself in, maybe washing your hands 10 times. And then a mental form of that is that you're just having the same thought over and over. So it's the same thing. But the thing that I would really like to, that I hope people walk away with is that um, there's no such thing as OCD thoughts. I mean, these thoughts are just human thoughts. So
Mhm.
I think the best example I've seen is, something like you're standing on a subway platform and a train's coming, and you have as a human a random thought that enters your head that is, oh, what if I push this person standing next to me in front of the train and they get hit? A normal brain is just gonna just that's you might not even register that thought. You'll just be like, ah, that was a weird thought, and you'll just go about your day. Whereas
Mhm.
an OCD has a flaw in the brain that will actually recirculate that thought into your brain, and you'll have a spike of anxiety because it's against your own sense of self identity. And you'll say, why would I have that thought? I'm not that person,
Mhm.
but I must be that person. So it's thought action fusion. It's like as you're having that thought, you're also instantly saying, I am that thought. So, and it's a weird thing. You're also, one part of yourself is fully aware of it, and you're like watching it, and you realize that that's not really true, but you can't help it on a visceral level. You are connected to your thoughts. It's a cognitive distortion that somebody with an OCD brain has, and you have to combat that. You have that thought, and so it's against your sense of self, and you're like, I'm a horrible person. I can't
Mhm.
believe I had that thought. And by having that thought, it creates this vicious cycle where you then try not, and you push the thought away, and you're like, well, I don't want to think that because that's uncomfortable and that's not who I am. And the more you do that, the more that thought circles back to you. So I hope that people realize that it's not really about the thoughts. These are just human thoughts. That it's just, OCD is an anxiety disorder. And it's just basically you're feeling that spike of anxiety, and then you're getting caught into a cycle of anxiety.
Mhm.
So I would encourage people as they're doing more research into OCD to not be hung up about the content or about what it is, because it's not really about the thoughts themselves. It's about our reaction, our relationship to those thoughts, and how we interpret them that's flawed.
Mhm.
So I don't know. I know that there's a lot of education in the film, but again, it's incredibly universal, and it's dealing about so much more than just that.
Yeah. And, I think over the past few years, especially with the pandemic, it's really been an intense period for a lot of people with mental health. So I
Sure.
do think there's a lot of good that can come out of this film. Um, you're a musician, some of your own music appears in this film. What impact do you think that your art or just art in general, and specifically music, plays in the mental health process and just in the process of healing?
Well, sure. I mean, I'm an artist in general, and specifically with music, I think it's so therapeutic. I mean, I come from a background. My mother was an art therapy teacher when I was younger, and my mother's a painter,
Mhm.
and she would work with at-risk youth and do therapeutic art. And so from a young age, I was super around it, and was involved. And so not only with my own experience and how much art has played a role in my own life, but I've seen firsthand how art has affected other people who engage with it. So I'm a huge proponent in the power of art that it can have in our lives. Obviously, I'm not splitting the atom here or curing cancer, but I heard somebody say one time, it's really great that um, some people save lives, and then other people make those lives worth living. So I think that art is truly that for me, and it feeds my soul, and is so therapeutic on so many levels. It can be entertainment, and there's nothing wrong with that, but it can also touch you in a different way, and it can connect with you and be a form of catharsis. It could bring things up for you. It can just create conversations and create. You can walk away, and hopefully, that's what I hope for my film. I hope that people are walking away feeling a little closer to themselves, maybe feeling a little closer to their loved ones. Maybe you're walking out of the theater, and you're sort of, hopefully, that lens of the rest of your day, you're walking around, and you're sort of like, really wondering with the people you meet. You never really know what somebody's going through, and all that sort of human stuff. I think that art really brings that out in us, and is a incredibly important aspect to our humanity.
Yeah, and that's one thing that I just really liked about this film is I felt like it really did humanize what OCD is. I remember a few years ago listening to a podcast about a similar situation with someone who had obsessive thoughts, and they were kind of in a same situation, thinking about certain thoughts with their partner,
Hmm.
and um, not totally getting it. And I think I came to a
Yeah.
point of having less of an empathy gap from watching this film, and so I think that's certainly a positive thing for me. um, I do wonder, in directing a film that's based on your real life experiences, was it ever a challenge to let it kind of flow into its own thing versus, channeling something in the way that you remembered it?
No, not at all, because my obviously it's my life and I put it all on the page and that's my story. But once I got into the process of making the film, I had a very different approach that I wanted to do, and I wanted to strive for naturalism in a way. So I casted a real life couple to play the leads in the film,
Hmm.
and the lead actress's parents are a real life couple, an older couple. I casted some real life OCD patients in the therapy scenes and in the drug and alcohol scenes. There's real counselors, and so I wanted to create a world where you didn't know sort of where the real life started and where the acting started. And I wanted it to all kind of rub up against each other, and so much of it was mine on the page, but I really wanted to provide agency to my actors to come in and to bring themselves as much as possible. So as much as they were comfortable doing, and we kind of played around with boundaries of where they stopped and the character began, and even they were rubbing that was all rubbing together in the film in a way that I thought would kind of, hopefully it creates a sense of just naturalism and true to life. And obviously I'm not creating a documentary, I'm creating a narrative film,
Mhm.
but I wanted it to feel like real life. I wanted these to feel like people that you could be having these conversations with. And I didn't want to, obviously, the process of creating a film is inherently kind of manipulative with what you're doing, but I wanted to try to, within that and intrinsic process of making a film, I wanted to just provide a sandbox for my actors to just play and to kind of bring as much of themselves to the story as possible.
Yeah, well, I definitely got that realism just watching the therapy scenes. It felt like you were watching, a real session of group therapy. So,
Right.
um, there's a line that I really liked where in the script where they said vulnerability is the greatest form of courage. And I think it took a lot of courage to make this film, and I commend you for telling the story.
Thank you, Matt. Yeah, it's all very meta. And yeah, it was obviously very vulnerable on my part to do it. All of my actors were incredibly vulnerable. And I mean, I'm just ecstatic with the performances that I received from my actors across the board, and how willing they were to be vulnerable within their own process and what they brought to the film. So it's been really special. Yeah, it's definitely hasn't just felt like another film that I've made, or another movie. It's definitely felt like something special, and I hope that the other people involved feel that way as well. But definitely for me, it's felt that way.
Yeah, well, just to kind of close it out, let the people reading this or listening in, let them know where they can check out your film.
Yeah, sure. So right now we'll be world premiering at South by Southwest next week. You can see it on their website. We have 3 screening times, but the world
Mhm.
premiere will be on Monday at noon at the Alamo Draft House on South Lamar in Austin, Texas. It'll also be screening Wednesday at 2:15 at the Rollins Theater at the Long Center in
Mhm.
Austin, Texas. And then again Thursday evening at the Alamo again in Austin, Texas. So for now, those are the 3 screenings, and then more to come. Hopefully, more festivals, and hopefully in a theater near you.
Awesome. So, thanks again so much for speaking with me today, Dylan. It's been a pleasure, and I am so stoked that I had the opportunity to watch your film. Was a very heavy film, but also a very poignant film. So, again, if you're going to South by Southwest, definitely check out Pure O.
Thank you so much, Matt, for taking the time to cover the film and speak with me.
Yep, you're welcome.